What's up, guys? Mike Dolce, four-time world MMA trainer of the year. I'm at the service station waiting for my car to get the oil change and air filter and all the good things you need to get done. But I wanted to talk to you about Belal Muhammad and Colby Covington, both firing accusations as to why the other one does not deserve the title shot for Leon Edwards' 170-pound UFC world title. Now, just a year ago, Colby Covington was considered to be the best fighter at 170 pounds who was not named Kamaru Usman. At that time, Kamaru Usman held the title, was a dominant champion, had beaten Colby twice, but by the slimmest of margins, and Colby had won multiple rounds against Kamaru. Colby had beaten Tyron Woodley. Colby had beaten Damian Maia. Colby had beaten a who's who of Rafael dos Anjos. Now, I should say, Damian Maia fought twice for the UFC world title. Rafael dos Anjos held the world title. Tyron Woodley held the welterweight world title. Kamaru Usman was holding the world title, and Colby was now fighting Jorge Masvidal, who twice fought Usman for the world title and beat Nate Diaz for the unimportant but notable BMF UFC title. So Colby was considered to be the number one contender at 170, and whoever won that fight was supposed to again challenge Usman for the title. Well, Colby blew Masvidal out of the octagon. It was a beating. 5-round lopsided decision victory. Colby looked amazing, and Masvidal just wasn't in the fight. For whatever reason, Masvidal got blown away. Well, a few weeks later, there was a serious alleged altercation, I think I have to say, between Masvidal and Colby at a restaurant in Florida, where allegedly Masvidal jumped Covington. And this has moved forward into legal proceedings and indictments and just the whole legal process that ensues. That has kind of put both athletes on ice. Now, since that time, Leon Edwards was matched up against Usman. Leon was losing the fight versus Usman and then landed a beautiful fight-finishing head kick, taking the title from Kamaru Usman. Now, unfortunately, in my opinion, Usman came back to rematch Edwards for this title last weekend. He came back too soon, in my opinion. Far too soon. There should be a minimum of a 6-month no-contact rule after any athlete gets knocked out. I've been in the game almost 30 years now. I've seen too many athletes come back far too soon and never be the same again. I'm embarrassed for this sport that Usman was allowed to come back, and I'm critical of Usman, his support system, and his team for allowing him to come back so soon. But nevertheless, Usman came back, and he got dominated by Edwards this time. It wasn't a very competitive fight. Edwards beat Usman. Now, after the fight, Dana White made the announcement that Colby Covington is now next in line. And this is where all the controversy begins. Because we have Belal Muhammad, who's on an 8-fight win streak in the welterweight division. Well, that's very deserving. But is it more deserving than Colby Covington, who was considered the consensus number one? Now, Belal says, well, Colby hasn't fought since he beat Masvidal, therefore, he doesn't deserve the fight. I see his point, but I don't agree. Simply because Colby hasn't fought doesn't mean he automatically loses his number one contender status. Now, Belal Muhammad has done great, but Belal Muhammad's last win was against Sean Brady, who is tough. Top 10 guy. beating Sean Brady, no disrespect, does not immediately catapult you into number one contender status. And that's the problem. Now, this is not Belal's fault. Mind you, I'm a fan of Belal Muhammad, of his fight style. And I would prefer to see Belal fight Colby. But that's not going to happen right now, because Colby's been promised by Dana White and Hunter Campbell to get the number one contendership and fight Leon Edwards. And I think that's a fair fight. I think that's justified. Now, if you look at the records, and I'm sorry, Belal, if you look at their records, Colby has fought an entire different class of competitor compared to Belal. And I spoke to that earlier. Colby destroyed Masvidal, who recently fought twice for the title, but I think that was more based upon hype, not because Masvidal truly deserved the status. So I'll put an asterisk next to Masvidal. Colby fought Usman, and Colby looked so good versus Usman. Those fights were so competitive. It's hard to say that Usman was discernibly better than Colby. Simply because Usman won doesn't mean Colby was outclassed or should lose his ranking. And I think that's fair. I'm not one of these MMA noobs who thinks because a guy or gal takes an L, they immediately suck. No. You have to rate athletes on their inherent abilities and the way they match up in the weight class. Their fight was so close. Colby didn't lose his ranking, and he didn't lose his ranking. Colby also destroyed Tyron Woodley right after Tyron lost his title to Usman. Now, Tyron was a dominant champion. He defended 5 times. And then he loses to Usman. Fair enough. Colby steps in and smokes him. Colby proved he's way better than the former champ, Woodley, and he's almost as good as the then current champ, Usman. Colby also destroyed former UFC lightweight champion and welterweight competitor, Rafael Dos Anjos, who's really good. My point to this is, when we look at their resumes and we look at every athlete Belal has fought and Colby's fought, well, you can't say that based upon their resumes, Belal's more deserving. Now, Belal has a better win streak, but the quality of competitor is not nearly as good as those that Colby fought. Then we can also talk about, well, what about Gilbert Burns? Gilbert Burns is right there. Now, Gilbert Burns is matched up versus Masvidal. Fingers crossed that fight happens. Belal, you should stay ready, buddy. Stay ready as the alternate, maybe you already are, for Burns and Masvidal. Because if one of those guys falls out, and what I'm hearing, one of those guys might fall out, Belal, that's your chance to step in and take the thunder. Because if you beat Masvidal, you got the hype. If you beat Gilbert Burns, you are legit, because Gilbert Burns is the legitimate number 2, number 3. Now we could say Colby, Belal, Gilbert, those are the top 3 guys in the division right now, not named Leon Edwards. Each one of those guys I'd love to see fight for a title. But who gets the shot first? That's the question. If Colby gets the shot, I'm not mad at that at all. And I think it's deserved. If Belal got the shot, I'm happy for Belal. And I think Colby then fights Gilbert Burns if Gilbert wins. And if Masvidal wins, that's a big rematch. That's a pay-per-view right there. Those guys can fight 5 rounds again, and they can both hype that. What do you think, though? Who should get the next shot at 170 at Leon Edwards? Now, last I will say, Leon Edwards says Colby doesn't deserve it because Colby hasn't fought in a year, but Masvidal deserves it if Masvidal beats Gilbert Burns. That makes no sense because Colby destroyed Masvidal. And if Masvidal gets by Burns, Masvidal still has a huge L next to his name at the hands of Colby Covington. So Leon Edwards, I believe, is looking for an easier fight because let's face it, Masvidal right now is an easier fight on paper than Colby Covington. Colby Covington right now is better than Usman. Colby Covington right now, as far as I see, until we see differently, has surpassed Usman. He's got better cardio. He's got equal wrestling. And I say he's got better striking. Colby's chin now, we can say, is definitely better. He's younger. He's more durable. So I'd say Colby Covington is the hardest fight in the division right now for Leon Edwards. And I think that's why Leon is trying to avoid Colby and trying to get the easier fight, as is his right. I get it. He's the champ. He did the rematch. Now he wants a payday. He wants a money fight, an easy fight. And that can definitely be Masvidal. But the way he's positioning it is wrong. It's deceptive. So he can just say, hey, I'm the champ. I want an easy fight. I want to make some money. Let me take Masvidal off the table, and then I'll fight Belal or Colby. Let them fight. That's what Leon should do, but he's not. He's acting like Colby doesn't deserve it, which now makes Leon sound like he's scared of Colby. And that's a bad look for a champion. But again, what do you guys think? Leave comments below. Let's hear about it. And until next time, boom.